This is the National Defense Authorization Act 2024.
On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 199. The bill is passed.
An $886 billion bill designed to protect America's national security. But what if I told you this defense bill was a red herring, funding projects completely unrelated to defense, while leaving disaster relief and urgent domestic needs to dry out? Today we'll expose the hidden agenda behind the National Defense Authorization Act 2024. From lobbying tactics to bizarre spending priorities, we're breaking it all down. What does this bill really say about the way Congress operates? Stay tuned, because the answers might surprise you. Let's start with the basics. The National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, is an annual bill that authorizes defense spending. Passed every year since 1961, it plays a critical role in shaping U.S. security policy. A cornerstone of our military spending, it covers everything from troops' pay and benefits to advanced weaponry and global operations. But here's the twist. The National Defense Authorization Act has morphed into a legislative Trojan horse. Because it's a must-pass bill, lawmakers sneak in unrelated provisions, controversial amendments, and, at times, absurd attempts to allocate funds towards partisan initiatives. And some of those attempts actually succeeded. Think of it as a massive legislative Swiss Army knife, filled with some tools that have absolutely no business being there. The National Defense Authorization Act 2024 authorizes a staggering $886 billion in spending. Here's a breakdown. $842 billion for the Department of Defense, $32 billion for nuclear programs under the Department of Energy, and the other $12 billion? It is used for financing programs for homeland security, surveillance activities, cybersecurity, and other, even more unrelated things. To understand the issues with this process, we first have to understand how the legislative process unfolds. The House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee develop the initial outline, which is then debated, amended, and voted on to write the first draft. It is then sent to the House and Senate, where representatives debate and propose further amendments. This is where political agendas get involved, with each side accusing the other of pushing their ideology. The House and Senate NDAA documents are sent to the Conference Committee for a final decision. The Conference Committee report reviews both versions, resolves differences, and is sent for presidential approval. Once the president signs off on it, it becomes the law. Now that we understand the process, let's uncover some politically motivated provisions that snuck into the NDAA 2024, and some that were intelligently left out. This is Exposed with Legislate This. If you enjoy our content, consider subscribing to the channel for more. Keep watching as we expose the hidden items now. The recent Supreme Court ruling prohibits racial discrimination in higher education. Since military service academies were not a part of those cases, the Department of Defense and other insiders have been trying to circumvent the ruling. Emails obtained through the Freedom of Information Act request showed that Lieutenant General Richard Clark believes that if we lose our limited window to reshape the racial diversity of each incoming class, it would affect our ability to meet the warfighting imperative of fielding a diverse, inclusive force. Emails also reveal that diversity may come into play during Air Force recruitment for two people of equal merit. The conflicting versions of the House and Senate bill were deliberated upon in the Conference Committee report, which wrote that a military accession or promotion shall be based upon individual merit and demonstrated performance. However, the Democrats removed the word exclusively. This allows the DoD to push DEI goals as they don't have to rely exclusively on meritocracy. The Conference Committee report similarly disallowed a provision regarding the prohibition of quotas for an entire year. More than 35 organizations signed a letter in October 2023, urging the Congress to exclude 22 anti-DEI provisions, among others.
The Air Force Academy slide deck instructing cadets to use language like, quote, parents and caregivers instead of moms and dads. Well, that's a really great use of time for the Air Force Academy. Don't refer to the phrase mom and dad. Boy, that'll do it.
To pile on further, the Conference Committee report added provisions regarding the removal of DoD's Chief Diversity Officer, stating that military and civilian employees could not be appointed for diversity, equity, and inclusion purposes. Similarly, the Diversity and Inclusion Office of the Department of Defense Education Activity, or DEA, educating almost 67,000 children, received restrictions. A major tenet of critical race theory was also disavowed, absolving individuals from bearing responsibility for the actions of others of the same race, color, or national origin. However, other clauses describing the CRT were left out of the final bill. Furthermore, academic freedom still allows instructors to pick books of their choice, including those with left-wing ideologies. A House measure aimed at the prohibition of purchasing pornographic and radical gender ideology books was also shot down after 150 House Democrats wrote a letter saying that the suggested provision threatened to erase the existence of trans people. To balance this out, the committee banned the display of a flag other than the approved flag, a soft aim to censor LGBTQ flags, but also incorporated parental consent regarding academic material and medical matters. Speaking of medical matters, the conferees rejected House measures aimed at prohibiting TRICARE and the DoD from covering sex reassignment surgery and gender hormone treatments. Similarly, the House wanted to deny the DoD any rights to perform gender transition procedures on children, but this was thrown out as well.
People and blowing stuff up again, because that's what a military is supposed to be for. Sparingly used, not in endless wars, but ready and able to defend the United States of America. The American people I talk to back home don't want a weak military. They don't want a woke military. They don't want rainbow propaganda on bases. They don't want to pay for troop sex changes. The American people want a military that can provide for security and win wars, and that is what we are doing with this legislation, and I'm proud to support the rule.
The issue of standards and readiness has long been a contentious topic within the Department of Defense. During the Obama administration, the Army introduced a gender-neutral physical fitness test to promote equality across service members. However, it faced significant challenges. Failure rates for women were notably high, and by 2022, the standards were scrapped in favor of a more traditional approach. This debate resurfaced in the 2024 NDAA. A House provision called for implementing sex-neutral standards for combat readiness, specifically targeting physically demanding roles like infantry, armor, and special operations forces. The aim was to balance inclusivity with maintaining the military's operational effectiveness. Yet, the compromise reached by the Conference Committee reflected the ongoing tensions. While it underscored the importance of combat readiness, it stopped short of mandating universal application of these standards. The outcome highlights a broader issue: how defense policy often walks a tightrope between achieving diversity goals and preserving military efficacy. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, ending the federal right to abortion, the Biden administration tried to offer reprieve to pro-abortion military personnel. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin issued a controversial memo authorizing assistance for military members and dependents traveling across state lines for abortion services. There was a lot of debate around eliminating those provisions in the 2024 NDAA.
Controlling women's bodies, overturning Roe versus Wade wasn't enough. They want to ban abortion nationwide. They want to restrict a service member's ability to get travel expenses covered, attacking LGBTQ plus service members, cutting off aid to Ukraine in the middle of their fight against Putin, stifling diversity and equity in the military.
The Republicans argued that the Department of Defense should not be involved in reimbursing controversial medical procedures. They wanted these policies restricted to special cases like rape. After a hotly contested debate session, the controversial Austin memo stayed in place. The House bill barred smaller contractors from disclosing their greenhouse gas inventories for business with the Pentagon, and the final bill added more leeway, extending the courtesy to larger contractors as well. The CCR also prohibited some House measures that would block funds, stopping the DoD and other federal agencies from carrying out 7 of Biden's climate change executive orders. The final section of the NDAA reads, "This section reauthorizes Title VII of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978, FISA, through April 19, 2024. Title VII of FISA addresses surveillance of targets outside the United States. FISA, or the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, has been a mainstay since 1978, but in recent years it has come under fire. While lawmakers agree that it is a critical tool for safeguarding national security, they also believe that it is being misused. According to them, FISA, in its current form, has plenty of loopholes that are exploited to spy on American citizens on American soil. It was also a part of the controversy when Carter Page, an aide to then presidential candidate Donald Trump, was spied on. Trump urged Congress to kill FISA and made some yet unsubstantiated claims about his Trump Tower phone being tapped. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said in a joint statement that reforming FISA authorities to prevent abuse while ensuring our ability to defend our nation is a shared, bipartisan, bicameral priority. However, no major changes were made, and the law is still being used after the Senate passed its 2-year extension in 2024. While the NDAA seems a rather airtight bowl of defense schematics, it is, in reality, much more. The Democrats and the Republicans use every inch of their political clout to add provisions that further their agendas. In recent years, the Biden administration has continued the policy to advance DEI agendas. It begs the question of how efficient our government processes really are, and if the elected officials actually have our best interests in mind, or are they just fighting for their party's political agendas? Will this change in the future, or will the NDAA always remain a playground for political ideologies? Let us know your thoughts about the NDAA Trojan horse in the comments. What changes do you think should be made to address the mishandling of public finances?